of its, was it from it's one of the papers I've read. It might have been, I don't remember. But I think there's also a special interest, not just from the top, but also from the bottom, to keep the status quo going. So we need to keep that in mind. That's part of the answer to your question. That's the best I can do. Michael?
Yeah, I'll offer a comment as well. Simple question, seems like, so I'll just give it a few seconds. I'm just kidding. That's a very complicated question where the role of government in this, and can the role of government prohibit or inhibit solutions? Absolutely. Sometimes it's the great enabler of government. Good government, it can be the great enabler. Sometimes it's a great problem. And it's not just countries with rent-seeking issues, but it's also the U.S., where the U.S. interferes in energy markets in many ways for many good reasons. We have a lot of environmental concerns, a lot of other issues. We have a lot of social justice concerns. So the energy markets are far from free markets in the U.S., and we've arrived there after 140 years of sort of stumbling along. And sometimes this intervention is good for some environmental protections. Some environmental protections undermine other environmental protections. And then sometimes we try to solve one problem, so we mandate a solution that's worse than the problem. And this really shows up. I'm a vocal critic of the biofuels mandates we have in the U.S. because there are many ways to do biofuels the right way. Then there's the way we do it in the U.S., which is sort of the wrong way. We use food that's not very productive to turn into a fuel, whereas other countries like Brazil use sort of a non-direct food feedstock. So this biofuels mandate was also done in a very poor way. It's a volumetric mandate. It's 15 billion gallons a year up to, from corn, to 36 billion gallons a year of other sources. It's not a percentage mandate. Well, what if we all switch from liquid fuels to electricity in the U.S.? We still have to produce and consume 36 billion gallons a year of biofuels, whether we like liquid fuels or not. As a water guy, I'm concerned because it's over 1,000 gallons of water per gallon of ethanol you produce, and that becomes a real water impact. So it's not just the rent seekers. It can be the very well-established good governance kind of areas as well. You then comment on whether renewables are compatible. They can be. Actually, renewables can be very compatible with rent-seeking. In Texas, where we're a rent-seeking government, we own a lot of state land, and a lot of those renewables are on state land. So I didn't list the numbers because it's just been ramping up recently. We actually make money from renewables in the state of Texas. And the University of Texas itself, just the university's lands in Texas could generate $20 million a year of rents from wind. So if you're in a country where you have state lands that could be used in a sustainable way for renewable energy, then you can generate yourself centuries worth of income as opposed to 20 years of income, which is more typical for an oil field or gas field. So it depends on the country. There are actually some places where it's very compatible with each other. In the U.S., kind of commenting on the technology and policy issue, when you look at what the Department of Energy has done for the last 20, 30 years of its investments, about 80 to 90% of its R&D investments have been in new sources of supply, and only about 10 to 20% of its R&D has been in reducing consumption. So this shows sort of the governmental bias towards technology will save the day. Don't change your behavior. Don't change your culture, markets, or policies. We'll get a new technology, and it will save the day for us so we can be lazy about it. So we see many different attitudes of many different governments worldwide. Some are very healthy and good. Some are problematic.
Can I just say one thing? Go ahead, Doug.
That's a very good question. And one other aspect of the question is that today we have a structure in which in developed countries we have all the carbon being emitted, and we have high use of energy and so forth and so on. And then you have, in the developing countries and the low-income countries, you have people which, as I showed in some of my slides, are using biomass and renewable energy and so forth. And in order to move to to make this energy transition to the higher forms of energy, whether it's renewable energy or even the commercial forms of energy, it will require more investments. And also, if you, instead of going the traditional route, if you go with renewable energy, it has all the benefits which were indicated by previously, but it is more expensive. So there is an equity issue involved in these issues. And then if you look at some of the carbon funds and so forth that are in existence today, they don't really address the poor countries actually aren't emitting very much carbon. There is some from fuel wood, which isn't even counted in most of the carbon studies. But even counting the fuel wood emissions from cooking, they don't emit much carbon. So they don't really qualify for much of the carbon money that carbon subsidies. They're called carbon credits, but really they are subsidies for new new kinds of use of different fuels. So this is a problem. They don't use because they don't use as much commercial energy today, they don't emit as much CO2, and therefore they don't qualify as much for the current cross subsidies which are being developed in the carbon. And in fact, just one example, we've been trying to get improved stoves as qualify for internal carbon credits within the World Bank Group. And they do qualify. They do have a program to qualify, but no programs have been financed yet. The stipulation was that the stoves that are financed, you have to prove that they are in an area where fuel wood is not harvested renewably for cooking. So there are a lot of policy issues actually that we have to think about in terms of equity for the low-income countries, in terms of how the carbon credits are, because it does make absolutely, go after low-hanging fruit, but don't forget some of the lowest hanging fruit, which is in developing countries.
Thank you, Doug. I think we have time for a couple more questions.
Megan Bartos, Advisor for Sustaina Partners. There's been quite a bit of discussion about bringing the small-scale sustainable projects to fruition that could bring basic energy to the 1.6 billion that lack it, which is, of course, both a necessary and possible goal. However, as emerging and developing countries seek to take the next steps and really industrialize, this is really where the largest increases in energy consumption and carbon emissions will be in the coming years, including the demand for jet fuel refined products, as well as the huge increases in energy. And I'm curious as to the panel's opinion on the paradigms and projects and technologies that will address this type of growth and how it can be achieved sustainably, or if it can be.
Thank you. It's very difficult. For some reason, it's very difficult to hear right here.
Can you repeat the question real quick?
Yes, I was
That's better.
seeking the panel's opinion about what paradigms, technologies, and projects they feel would address the next level of growth, sort of beyond bringing basic small-scale projects to those who have no energy in the least developed countries, and how sort of the next steps will be addressed as far as the huge increase in demand in jet fuel, refined products, and increases in electricity as emerging economies industrialize further.
Go ahead.
Okay, that's a great question. So there are a lot of benefits of renewable power in the electricity world, but a lot of challenges with, two big challenges with renewables, specifically wind or tidal or solar, that they tend to be where the people are not. It's usually windy where the people don't live, with the exception being Scotland. Only the Scots live where it's windy. In fact, there's one island, Shetland Island, where the joke is one day the wind stopped and everyone fell over because it's so windy. But for the most part, we live where it's not windy. And we do in America live somewhere it's sunny, so there's some overlap there. But there's variability with when the wind and solar are available, and they're remote. So we need two great paradigm breakthroughs in technology that could help. Would be large-scale, affordable, economical energy storage, which deals with variability and intermittency, and you could do that with pumped hydroelectric or different types of batteries, or you could make fuels. You could do compressed air energy storage underground in geological formations. Large-scale storage deals with the variability and intermittency, and then we need really efficient long-haul grids. Now, this is a counter comment to small-scale distributed grid, but if you have long-haul efficient grids, then you can connect Saharan desert to European demand centers as well as locally. There's some advantage with these large kind of infrastructure projects if you can move the resource from where it is to where the people are. Sometimes it's easier to do that than to move the people to where the resource is. So those are two helpful shifts in the electricity world. In the liquid fuels world, if you're really good at the renewables, you can move more of our light-duty vehicle fleet to electricity, and that frees up a lot of the middle distillates or whatever you might need from the various